Today, we're diving into a critical topic, child maltreatment, and its impact on social relationships. This presentation, based on the work of Penelope K. Trickett and Sonia Negriff, will explore how different forms of maltreatment influence social development across the lifespan. The image here represents the powerful bond between a child and caregiver, something that's central to understanding the effects of maltreatment. Let's begin our journey into this important subject. Today, we'll explore several important topics, starting with the history of the problem and awareness of child abuse. We'll then look at the four main categories of maltreatment and the annual incidence rates. After that, we'll discuss the impact of child maltreatment on social development, focusing on attachment relationships during infancy and early childhood. We'll also cover peer relations and friendships, followed by romantic relationships and dating violence. Finally, we'll examine the intergenerational continuity of maltreatment before wrapping up with our conclusions. Here we see the history of how society came to recognize child maltreatment as a serious issue. Initially, in the early 20th century, the focus was mainly on child neglect. It wasn't until the 1960s and 70s that physical and sexual abuse gained widespread attention. A major turning point came with the passage of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, or CAPTA, in 1974. This federal law was crucial because it provided clear definitions and established programs that guide how states identify and respond to child maltreatment. CAPTA really laid the foundation for the legal and research frameworks we rely on today, highlighting the government's important role in addressing this complex problem. The image here, showing a gentle connection between an adult and a child, reminds us why this work is so vital. Child neglect has been recognized by society since the early 20th century, but it wasn't until the 1960s that physical abuse gained widespread attention, largely due to doctors identifying battered child syndrome. This medical discovery was a turning point in how child abuse was understood. By 1974, this awareness led to the passing of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, a significant piece of federal legislation that marked a new level of public and government commitment to addressing child abuse and neglect. The image here helps visualize the environment where these issues often arise, reminding us how important it is to protect and care for children in our communities. On this slide, we see the four main categories of child maltreatment, each with its own distinct characteristics. First, physical abuse involves any non-accidental physical injury caused by a parent or caregiver, such as striking, kicking, or burning. Then, sexual abuse includes situations where a child is involved in sexual activities for the gratification or benefit of another, such as molestation or incest. Psychological or emotional maltreatment covers actions or neglect that lead to mental harm, including verbal abuse or placing excessive demands on the child. Finally, neglect is defined as a caregiver's failure to provide essential care like food, shelter, or medical attention, despite having the resources to do so. It's important to understand that these definitions can vary between states and are often somewhat vague, which makes consistent identification and research challenging. Recognizing these categories is crucial for protecting children and providing appropriate interventions. Here we see the annual incidence rates of child abuse and neglect in the U.S., based on the fourth National Incidence Study. The chart compares two standards, the harm standard and the endangerment standard. The harm standard measures cases where there is clear evidence of actual harm, with an incidence rate of 17.2 per 1,000 children. In contrast, the endangerment standard, which includes children at risk of harm, nearly doubles that rate to 40 per 1,000 children. This means that when we widen our scope to potential risk, the number of affected children almost doubles, highlighting a much larger issue. It's important to note that neglect constitutes the majority of these cases, showing just how widespread child maltreatment remains across the country. These findings underscore the critical need for ongoing vigilance and intervention by child protection agencies and community professionals. On this slide, we explore the developmental perspective of how child maltreatment impacts social development across different stages of life. The review highlights four key areas, starting with attachment relationships in infancy, which are foundational for all later social connections. Next, it examines peer friendships during middle childhood, where children learn important social skills and trust. Moving into adolescence and emerging adulthood, the focus shifts to romantic and sexual relationships, which can be deeply influenced by earlier experiences of maltreatment. Finally, the review addresses parenting in adulthood, showing how these early wounds can affect the way individuals care for the next generation. The image of children playing together beautifully illustrates this ongoing journey of social growth and the lasting effects that maltreatment can have along the way. Here we see the impact of maltreatment on attachment in young children. Children who experience physical abuse or neglect are much more likely to develop insecure attachments, especially the disorganized or disoriented type. This insecure attachment isn't just a label. It often leads to strange and negative social behaviors like aggression or confusion when interacting with both peers and caregivers. These children can struggle with approach avoidance conflicts, meaning they may simultaneously seek and avoid close relationships. The image here beautifully illustrates the importance of a nurturing connection between caregiver and child, reminding us how vital secure attachment is for healthy emotional and social development. Let's look at how maltreatment affects children's peer relationships and friendships over time. Early on, maltreated children often display aggression or withdrawal toward their peers. They might react to distress with fear, threats, or avoidance, which really impacts their initial social behaviors. As these patterns continue, they frequently lead to more serious social problems later on, such as peer rejection, bullying, and lower peer status. These difficulties are often tied to challenges with emotion regulation and increased aggression, highlighting how important it is to understand these developmental processes and intervene early. Here we focus on the crucial link between early peer relationships and later romantic connections. Maltreatment during childhood, and especially sexual abuse, can have serious consequences. It often leads to risky sexual behavior, unhealthy attitudes towards intimacy, and a heightened fear of closeness. These experiences also increase the likelihood of dating violence and make young adults more vulnerable to being re-victimized both physically and sexually. Recognizing these patterns is key to promoting healthier relationship dynamics and effective prevention strategies. The image here reflects the natural progression from peer interactions into romantic relationships during adolescence. Here we explore the impact of childhood maltreatment on parenting. Experiencing physical abuse, sexual abuse, or neglect as a child can lead to significant challenges in adulthood, especially in how individuals parent their own children. These challenges often involve harsher discipline, less warmth, higher aggression, and a greater likelihood of rejection or dissatisfaction with their kids. Research indicates that some parents who suffered maltreatment are more prone to repeating these patterns with their own children, raising concerns about this cycle continuing across generations. This image here beautifully highlights the importance of breaking that cycle to foster healthier family bonds and relationships. As we conclude, it's crucial to understand that child maltreatment in all its forms profoundly impacts the development of healthy social relationships, not only during childhood but extending through adolescence and into adulthood. Recognizing the different ways this trauma can present and identifying the social factors that mediate its effects are key to designing effective prevention and intervention strategies. This means that focused research into these variations and supportive social environments can help build resilience and foster better outcomes. The image here beautifully illustrates the importance of support and connection in nurturing social development despite challenges.